This is Miss Anna, and today I want to tell you something that most women will not want to hear, but that every woman deserves to understand before it is too late to change anything. Good men do not stop fighting for their marriages all at once. There's no single morning where a man wakes up and decides he is done. It happens the way most important things in a marriage happen. Slowly, quietly, one small withdrawal at a time, until the day arrives when his wife looks across the room and realizes the man who used to fight for her has stopped fighting entirely, and she cannot point to the moment it happened because there was no single moment. There were 1,000 small ones. I am Miss Alice, and today I am going to name 7 specific reasons good men stop fighting for their women and their marriages. Not because these men stopped loving, because they learned, gradually and painfully, that fighting for this particular relationship no longer produced anything worth the cost of trying. Reason number 1, he stopped believing his effort would ever be enough. There was a time when he tried. He planned the date. He remembered the anniversary. He made the gesture he thought would land. And what came back was not gratitude. It was a comparison, a critique, a version of thank you that carried something underneath it, communicating that the effort, while noted, still fell short of what should have been done, or how it should have been done, or when. Each individual response had a reason behind it. The date was nice, but it could have been more thoughtful. The gesture was appreciated, but a friend's husband did something similar and did it better. None of it was said with cruelty. Most of it was said as passing observation. But look at what accumulates across years of a man trying and receiving the message that trying was not quite sufficient. He does not conclude that he needs to try harder. He concludes that there is no version of effort that produces the outcome he is looking for, which is to feel like enough. So he stops offering the effort, not because he no longer loves her, because a man does not keep spending himself in a place that has taught him spending does not work. Tell him specifically what would make him feel like enough, and receive what he offers as sufficient even when it is imperfect. A man who feels like his effort lands is a man who keeps offering it. Reason number 2, he got tired of being the only one repairing things after every conflict. Every marriage has conflict. What separates the marriages that last from the ones that do not is not the presence of conflict. It is what happens after. In this marriage, after every disagreement, he was the one who circled back. He was the one who apologized first, even for things that were not entirely his fault, because the alternative was a silence that could stretch for days. He was the one who initiated the conversation that repaired the distance every time, regardless of who caused it. She told herself this was simply how their dynamic worked, that he was better at these conversations, that she needed time and he did not. What she did not see was a man doing the emotional labor of repair alone, over and over, while she waited to be reached rather than reaching herself. A man can carry that for a long time. But eventually, carrying the entire weight of reconciliation in a partnership becomes its own kind of exhausting, one that has nothing to do with the original conflict and everything to do with being the only one who ever seems to want peace badly enough to build the bridge back to it. So he stops building it, not out of spite, out of depletion. Meet him halfway after conflict. The relationship survives on 2 people willing to repair it, not one person repairing it for both. Reason number 3, he watched his opinions get overruled so consistently that he stopped offering them. He had a thought about the vacation, a preference about the furniture, a view on how to handle something with the kids. He offered it the way a partner offers something in a shared decision. And what came back, gently but consistently, was the reason his view was not quite right, followed by the decision that was made anyway, in the direction she had already wanted. This did not feel like conflict to her. It felt like having good judgment and using it. But from where he sat, a pattern was forming that had nothing to do with any single decision and everything to do with what his opinion was worth in this marriage, which, based on the evidence accumulating in front of him, was very little. A man who learns that his input does not change outcomes eventually stops offering input. Not because he has none, because offering it and watching it get set aside is more discouraging than simply going along. So he goes along, and she experiences that as him not caring what happens. He cares. He just stopped believing caring out loud made any difference here. Ask for his opinion and let it visibly move the decision sometimes, even when your instinct disagrees. A man who sees his voice matter keeps using it. Reason number 4. He ran out of ways to prove his loyalty to a woman who kept looking for evidence he was not loyal. He was faithful, in every sense that mattered, but loyalty in this marriage was never treated as a settled fact. It was treated as something under ongoing investigation, a phone glanced at, a friendship questioned, a late night at work that required an explanation more detailed than the situation warranted. Each individual instance had a reason behind it in her mind, a history somewhere, a fear that felt justified. But he was not living inside her history. He was living inside the daily experience of being treated like a suspect in a case where he had never committed the crime. And there is only so long a man can be cross-examined for a betrayal he did not commit before something in him quietly closes. He did not become distant because he had something to hide. He became distant because being endlessly investigated for a loyalty he had already given, completely, stopped feeling like a marriage and started feeling like a trial with no verdict that would ever be final. Trust the loyalty that has been demonstrated and let the investigation end. A man who is treated as trustworthy tends to keep being exactly that. Reason number 5. He got exhausted competing with a version of himself she preferred that did not actually exist. Somewhere in her mind was a version of him, more attentive, more romantic, more emotionally fluent than the man standing in front of her actually was. She did not invent this cruelly. It came from other marriages she observed from a distance, from what culture had told her a good husband looks like, from the earliest months of their relationship when everything was easier because everything was new. And the real man, specific and particular and limited in the ordinary ways that real people are limited, kept being measured against this other version. Every time he fell short of it, she let him know, sometimes with words, more often with the specific disappointment in her voice that a man learns to recognize instantly. He cannot win a competition against someone who does not exist. Eventually, he understood that, and he stopped trying to close a gap that had nothing to do with his actual effort and everything to do with a fantasy he was never going to be able to outcompete. So he settled into being exactly what he was, without the added effort of reaching for a standard that was never real to begin with. See the man in front of you as the whole relationship, not the runner-up to one you imagined. A man who is loved as himself keeps showing up as himself, fully. Reason number 6. He stopped feeling wanted and started feeling merely tolerated. Somewhere along the way, her attention toward him became functional rather than warm. She spoke to him about logistics, schedules, the children, the household. She rarely spoke to him the way people speak to someone they are still choosing, with warmth that has no task attached to it. He noticed the way a person notices the temperature of a room even when nobody names it. He was fed, managed, coordinated with. He was not desired, sought after, or missed. And a man can live for a long time on being useful. But being useful is not the same as being wanted, and eventually the difference between those two things becomes the loudest thing in the marriage. He stopped reaching for warmth he had learned was not there to reach for. Not because he stopped needing it, because reaching repeatedly into an empty space teaches a person to stop reaching. Let him feel chosen, not just accommodated. A man who feels wanted keeps wanting to come home. Reason number 7. He decided the fight was no longer his to carry alone. A marriage is only sustained by two people who both believe it is worth fighting for. For a long time, he believed it enough for both of them. He absorbed the disappointments, initiated the repairs, offered the effort, defended the loyalty, competed with the fantasy, and reached for warmth that was not always returned, because somewhere inside him was the conviction that this marriage mattered enough to keep doing all of it. But conviction that is carried by only one person in a partnership has a limit. Not because his love ran out, because a fight sustained by one person eventually stops being a fight and starts being a burden. And a man does not stop loving his wife the day he sets that burden down. He simply reaches the point where continuing to carry it alone has become indistinguishable from carrying nothing at all. Here is what I want every woman watching this to understand. These 7 things are not proof that your husband stopped loving you. They are proof that love, unmet by reciprocity, eventually runs out of places to put itself. He did not leave the fight because the marriage stopped mattering to him. He left it because he ran out of evidence that fighting for it alone was changing anything. The distance you are feeling from him right now is not indifference. It is exhaustion wearing the face of indifference, because exhaustion and indifference look identical from the outside, even though only one of them can be healed. That does not mean the fight is over. It means it has to become a fight both of you are actually in, not him carrying it while you observe it. Both of you choosing it daily in ways the other person can actually feel. I want to hear from the men watching this. Which of these 7 reasons is the one you are living right now quietly without having said it out loud yet? Tell me in the comments, because the men who need to hear this named clearly are the ones still deciding whether to keep fighting or finally stop. And to the women watching, one question. If your husband described, honestly, the moment he started to step back, would you know which one it was? Sit with that question before you answer it. This is Miss Anna, and I will be back with more of what nobody else will say. Subscribe if you are ready to keep hearing it.